This is Right to Life Radio. And now, here's your host, John DeRoe.
We are here with Right to Life Radio, and as we do every first Saturday of the month, this Saturday, June 1st, we have Linda Teliha from Right to Life Central California with us. Linda is our chief sidewalk advocate, our sort of frontline person talking with women and couples going into and out of Planned Parenthood in Fresno to talk with them about the abortion decision. And as we always do for our first Saturday, we have our Stories from the Sidewalk, where Linda kind of gives us a glimpse of what's happening on the front lines in the abortion fight. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
Right to Life Radio. So
Sorry.
often with Stories from the Sidewalk, we're trying to accentuate the positives and talk about the success stories. And we do have a lot of wonderful, great
22.
success stories. Yes, exactly. 22 just over the last year. Over the last year, is that
In June it'll be a year.
Yeah. So from June to June. But
I guess we are in
obviously,
June, huh?
yeah. But obviously, I mean, all we can do is offer alternatives, and often we have stories where people don't take us up. And you've had a couple of experiences over the last month of people not taking you up on it. And I think it's good to present to people the pretty and the ugly with these discussions, because I think it also highlights the reasons why people don't take us up on it. I think highlights some of the insidious nature of abortion in America. So why don't I'll let you tell the stories. I know you had sort of these two different stories lately. So take it away.
Okay.
And I think though the reasons why these people choose to do what they do and just sort of the flimsiness of it is heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking. Anyway,
Yeah, it really is.
go for it.
I think I could lead in by saying that before I started doing this work, I thought, well, just give me an opportunity to talk to these people, these moms, and then maybe that will make the difference. I'm sure it will. You know, think that's part of my competitive nature, and I'm just thinking, yeah, I got
I can
this.
talk them out of it. Yeah.
Well, I have a little more humility because I can't always talk them out of it, and it's not really that I'm trying to talk them out of it. I'm trying to talk them into look at this whole picture.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, is that what we're trying to do is talk them into a more positive vision for their life, their future, what they're trying to do, as opposed to just not just don't get an abortion.
Right. Because I think there's this perception that that pro-life advocates or pro-life, I always forget the word.
They only care about fetuses. They don't care about people.
Not advocates, but what's
until you're born. Yeah, they basically
the other name where they're more vocal and more in your face.
Oh, the abolitionist crowd.
But anyway,
anyway,
I don't know. I got this kind of figure out and then
all right, whatever.
Off the track. But anyway, people have this perception that we are out there trying to manipulate, just plain manipulate for some personal reason, or there's some sort of agenda. Yeah. And that's not true.
Right.
At least it isn't for me. Yeah. I truly look at each person and think, do you have any idea what this is going to look like tomorrow or in a week or a month or a year?
5 years from now, 10 years from now. Yeah.
Yeah. And now I'm old enough to really see how that comes to fruition, even, as I become a grandmother, that it keeps going. So anyway, I was outside of Planned Parenthood and I saw this couple and obviously, offered them a flower, and they came over to start talking. And I said, I just straight asked, what are you here for? And she's like, I'm having an abortion. And I looked at him and I said, is this what you want? And he's like,
whatever
I don't
she
get
wants.
it. Like, here's a guy whose child is about to be aborted. And he, if that's what she wants. And so I talked to him a little more because he was a little more open. In fact, she wasn't even going to come over. And then pretty soon she started talking. And I said, do you understand what this looks like? High rate of suicide, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, drug addiction. And she's like, it's just not time.
Right.
It's not time for me to have a baby. And I said, if I had a nickel for every person who said, this is bad timing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
I don't know that any child is like great time. Every child presents a lot of difficulties and struggles and stuff.
Totally.
I mean,
And so I just mentioned that, and I just said, let's map out how this looks. And I could not get through. I mean, normally once I start mapping it out, the person starts to show some emotion, and she really didn't. And during that time, I kind of waved Deshaun over because he seems to have a better way of talking to the guys. Yeah. And so he started talking to the guy, and the guy, if she would have said, yeah, I want to have a baby, he was like, sure, I'll get another job.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. And I talked to her about it, and I said, do you understand what's really going on? There's so much social media out there saying you're going to celebrate an abortion. I said, it's one thing, to consider an abortion, but these people are dancing on graves.
Yeah.
They're celebrating the death of a child. Do you understand that? And I'm showing her the pictures.
And that's what some of these abortion advocates and the Planned Parenthood types do. Yeah.
And so she's like, yeah, I know, but I'm going to graduate, and it's just going to ruin all my dreams and stuff. And I looked at her and I said, what do you want to do what are you planning? She said, well, I want to be a teacher. And I said, well, let me tell you my story. Mm-hmm.
You being a substitute. You being a teacher. Yeah.
Well, I was, from the start, I was 19. Mm-hmm. And I even had bigger dreams. I thought I was going to go to the Olympics. People were saying, you're going to go to the Olympics. And obviously I didn't. And I chose to have a baby. And I'm able to fast forward it and say, so now I have 4 kids and 3 grandkids, and I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a teaching credential, and I own 2 businesses, and I'm pursuing my passion too. Mm-hmm. This is what it looks like later.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to tell you this, and I hesitate to tell you, but I'm going to tell you. You're going to look out onto your students, and you're going to see your child. And I know this because of how many people I've talked to who are driving in and out of the parking lot. And I want to talk to you and tell you about these things so that there isn't a day later when you look something up or accidentally see something and you realize what you've done.
Mm-hmm. And it just didn't work.
She just was like,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think that's the difficult things. Yeah. And the difficult thing is, like, obviously all we can do is propose. Mm-hmm. People still have free will. People are still going to make their choices. And what can you do other than pray for them and wish for them the best? And if there's ever a time when we can help them after the fact, we will.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's also, it's the thing of, like, she clearly doesn't seem to want to have an abortion, but the reasons for wanting it just seem so flimsy. Like it just seems like there's a little effort to be put in.
Well, she's
and you
like, I'm going to pursue these goals.
Yeah, and it's like these goals are still attainable. I guess it's just the lack.
I don't know if
it's,
I talked to her about.
Yeah,
and it's hard. But
I guess that's the thing that makes me sad.
It is
so sad is that beyond just the loss of life, which is obviously so sad in itself.
The loss of lives is what you're getting to.
Well, lives, yes. Mm-hmm. But it's also just like, it's not impossible. How many teachers are there in the United States of America who have kids? I mean, like, or who had a kid before they became a teacher? Like, that's not an unattainable goal just because you have a child a little earlier than you want.
I just am now remembering there was another part of this story where I looked at her and I said, have you told your mother? Mm-hmm. And she's like, no. I said, well, why not? And she said, I just don't want her to be disappointed. And I said, give your mother one more chance to have an opportunity to be a mother, because you might be surprised. Right. She may have something in her past where she's able to say, hey, you know what? I understand. Yeah. But this abortion it's not what you should do.
And we've talked about this before. I think the kind of almost tunnel vision that, like,
it basically was.
It's like, this is the easiest way out. And you sort of shut down your other moral reasoning and thinking it through, and I need to do this. I need to do this.
I need to get it done.
Yeah. When we return, we'll talk about more of these stories from the sidewalk and more reasons why people opt to choose abortion. We will be back with more on Right to Life Radio right after this. We're back with Right to Life Radio and more of our stories from the sidewalk, talking with Right to Life's Linda Teliha about experiences talking, interacting with women and couples considering abortion on the street outside of Planned Parenthood, and at our building we have it Right to Life. It's right next door to Planned Parenthood. Now, you've had a couple. We're trying to highlight today some of the less great stories and people who turn us down for help. And also, I think sometimes we have this, people make difficult and bad choices, and we had a couple of instances like that. So, Lynn, why don't you share some of the difficulties we've seen, even with people who maybe do choose life?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, so after the experience of the person going straight into Planned Parenthood, afterwards, I just sort of looked at our trusty security guard and I was like, well, why'd I even go outside? And he was like, well, because it mattered. She, at first she wasn't going to talk to you at all. And then she came over and then she wasn't saying anything. And then she started to talk and then you had an opportunity to plant the seed. So you don't know what happens after.
Yeah. And that is, we have talked about that before, it's not like we're owed to know all the success stories. And we do know that no-show rates at Planned Parenthoods go up by large, significant percentages when pro-lifers are out there. So
they should tell us, though, because
they
that would
should
be
tell
better
you.
for me.
It would certainly help, certainly.
In my world, that's important.
It would certainly help. But, and he's right. I mean, obviously, it still sucks in the moment.
It sucks.
But there is that.
Yeah.
Now,
So that kind of brings us around to the primary reason why I do this at all, and I'm able to talk to these girls and women and meet them really where they are, and that is hope. Because we've had some situations now, because we've been doing this long enough, where somebody chooses life and they're all happy and everything's good and we're helping them, and then they go off the tracks.
right.
Somehow they go off the tracks, into a negative lifestyle. And that still causes me to think, what did I miss? What did I do?
Right. Or if
Not
it's,
do.
Yeah. And it's kind of a thing of, obviously there's only so much we can control and we do our best to help people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that I am...
Yeah.
I mean, I do like control, but
well,
that's a
I
secret,
think
isn't it?
and I think that's the thing is, these human lives, whom the lives of these children, they have value.
Yes.
And killing them is wrong, whether the mom is someone who turns her life around to become an absolute superstar, amazing, successful, great person, loving wife and mother, someone like, our friend Aleda, who we worked with, and our friend Tiana, who we worked with, through these very
all kinds of
inspiring young women who've had these great stories. We do it for them, but their babies are just as important as the babies of the mom who has a drug problem.
Right.
And after she decides not to have an abortion, goes off and starts doing drugs again. Her babies are equally important.
Life is important.
And the hope and the alternatives and the desire to get on a right track that we offer to, again, the cool young moms who are making good choices, as well as to the moms who are not doing so great. We offer it to both, and we have to love them both equally as best we can.
And I have to say, sort of joking about having control, but this is a deeply emotional, important opportunity to help someone see their own life. And I take that very personally. I take it, heavily. I guess that's the word. Sometimes, like, I should know this.
How can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, well, that's how it goes. But to me, I'm like, what did I miss? And I do understand the reality of I am the vessel. I am not the deciding factor.
Right.
But, and to end this, Sarah and I both just got some communication from one of the moms who had gone off the track and telling us both that she was back on and things were better and they were going to go well, and she just wanted to make sure we knew. So that was both of us saying, what?
Well, that's
like,
good.
What is going on?
Yeah.
And thinking, well, now what? To now, it's hope. It's still about hope. She still has hope. and her child that she did not abort,
Right.
regardless of the circumstances, has hope.
He's got a chance. He's got a fighting shot.
Yep.
Yeah. And I guess that's all we can say. I mean, like these stories aren't all going to end in. And I think too often with the pro-life movement, we want everything to be a wonderful fairy tale ending. It's not always going to have a wonderful fairy tale ending. People have free will. Life doesn't have fairy tale endings all the time. People have free will. People make choices. Bad things happen. People make mistakes. But we do what we can where we are. So, yeah.
I say even for me, I had a different kind of support and social economic system. It was still hard.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was still dark. And I never imagined I'd be this far down the road and look back and think, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. Thank God. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Linda. And for any of you who want to learn more about what we do at Right to Life of Central California, particularly our outreach ministry, you can visit us at rtlcc.org and help support our work. Click that donate button. Help us continue to provide these critical services. Thank you, Linda. And we will be back with our buddy Jonathan Keller talking about some bad stuff happening in the California legislature. Next on Right to Life Radio.
Shocking.
Our thanks to Linda Teliha for joining us, as always, for Stories from the Sidewalk. And we're going to have a lot of interesting stuff coming up, particularly next week. We may have an interview, hopefully, we'll see, with Bishop Brennan from the Diocese of Fresno.
Oh, yeah.
But for now, you've got our good buddy Jonathan Keller from California Family Council, as always, our faithful trusty sidekick here at Right to Life Radio.
Howdy, howdy.
All right, Jonathan. So I think for today, what we're going to focus on is Governor Newsom finally signing into law the ridiculous bill that was introduced in the California legislature and just flew through, SB 233, and its implications. Basically, this is a bill to further facilitate Gavin Newsom getting elected in 2028 because he's impressing his donors. I mean, excuse me. This is a bill for facilitating abortion doctors in Arizona to come to California to perform abortions and receive temporary California state licensure in order to do so. So, Jonathan, take us through this and kind of how absurd it is. I know California Family Council was very active on this and highlighting the absurdity of this bill.
Yeah, so this bill, SB 233, we just published an article / press release at our website a couple of days ago. You can always find californiafamily.org. The title of this article was SB 233, just the latest hypocritical abortion propaganda from Sacramento. And essentially, this bill, we've talked about it, as you said, John. It is just kind of shocking the rapidity with which legislators can get things done if they really care about their donors' desires.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing is for those who don't follow California state politics in Sacramento all that well, or all that closely, I should say, the whole schedule of this bill getting passed was unbelievably condensed.
Yep.
Like for most bills in California, they get introduced. So the new legislature, the new legislative session starts usually at, January 3rd, I think?
Yes.
So January 3rd, the new legislative session starts when everyone's sworn in. You have until, you have about a month and a half or so to introduce your bill. It has to get passed out of its house of origin by, around... It's right around now, isn't it? Around May, you have to get
usually the end. You've got a lot of deadlines, different deadlines, but a lot of them are in May, and then a couple of deadlines in June.
Right. So the whole legislative year lasts from the beginning of January through the end of August during an election year, and the beginning of January through mid-September during a non-election year. This bill got introduced and passed in a manner of like 3 weeks.
Right.
From initial introduction through signature by the governor in an incredibly condensed time frame.
And this is one of those horrible gut and amend things, John, where if you go back and you look, people might go online and say, "Oh, well, SB 233. What are you talking about?" I go here and I look at the history for the bill, and it says it was introduced the first time, read the first time to Committee on Rules, January 24th of 2023. So hey, I mean that was a year and a half ago. What's the big deal? Well, you go look at all the dates, everything that has happened. You look here, and it says in September. It says on September 13th. It says. Ordered to inactive file on request of Assemblymember Weber. So essentially, it was put in the
inactive file.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was basically sitting here, kind of waiting. It had passed through a bunch of committees. It had gone back and forth. It had gone lots of discussion. John, frankly, I don't even know what the original text of the bill was at this point. I could look it up, but I don't want to bore people.
Right.
But the gist of it was kind of sitting here as this ticking time bomb. And a lot of times,
well, what they do is they write these bills that just become kind of empty vessels.
Right.
And then when they want to introduce something in the middle of the session, something happens, they'll take some old existing bill that might have to do with some completely different subject, and they, quote, amend it by Xing out the entire text of the bill and replacing it entirely with something else so that they can pass it on this expedited schedule without all the necessary hearings, without all the necessary oversight and accountability from the voters, frankly.
Correct.
Through their elected representatives. We always mention this example. There was some terrible abortion bill that got passed about 10 years ago where the bill started out, it was a bill regulating marine paint.
Correct.
Like paint on boats in California, vessels that are licensed, I guess, in California docks and waterways. And then they X'd out every single word of that bill and replaced it with an abortion bill. So they do this these kinds of shenanigans in the state legislature all the time. Why? Well, because when one party controls more than 3/4 of all the seats, they can kind of procedurally get away with whatever the heck they want to do. And that's precisely what they did here.
I looked this one up because I was thinking here, while you're vamping here, I said, let me just look and see what was the original title of this bill. So originally, the bill, currently it says SB 233 as amended, Practice of Medicine, Arizona Physicians, Abortion and Abortion-Related Care for Arizona Patients.
Right.
Now, that is a very specific thing. Where it obviously is dealing with the medical profession. It's dealing specifically with abortion.
With California licensure.
Yeah. So one might assume when you think about amending a bill, people think, oh, well, okay, so maybe before it was dealing with a different facet of California abortion law.
Yeah.
Maybe it was OBGYN care more broadly. It wasn't specifically abortion.
You think when a bill is amended that the basic subject matter has remained the same.
Correct.
You're dealing with changes to accidents rather than the substance.
Correct.
To bring in some
Thomistic,
some Aristotelian verbiage.
Yeah. Or you have something where you have constituents who are going to be affected by the bill who are saying, we really think that you could tighten up the language here, or it's going to have an unintended consequence over there.
Yeah, like a $20 per hour minimum wage law that, we're not going to include Panera as part. Oh wait, that would be crazy to pass something like that. Who would ever do that?
So John, I think this might actually be on par with our old favorite one about the marine boat paint because I gave you the title.
So what was the original? Subject matter?
The original subject matter said SB 233, battery electric vehicles and electric vehicle supply equipment, bi-directional capability.
So we took this bill that was about electric car batteries, and overnight we transformed it into a bill permitting Arizona abortion doctors to come to California to perform abortions. All right, so let's shift gears just a little bit here, just to explain the history of why is Governor Newsom doing this. All right, Arizona had a law on the books at the time of Roe v. Wade. Their law regulating abortion at the time of Roe v. Wade said no abortion except to save the mother's life. And this law in Arizona was consistent with laws that were passed in states all throughout the United States. Most states have a law like this limiting abortion. Then Roe v. Wade comes into effect in 1973. So this state law is not enforceable. The Arizona state legislature says, screw you, Supreme Court. We think this was a wrong decision. And they actually passed another law in 1977 just reiterating the same thing, saying we think abortion should be illegal in Arizona except to save the life of the mother. We understand that this law we're passing won't be enforceable because Roe v. Wade's on the books. But that's what we, the state legislature, the elected representatives of the people of Arizona, believe. Fast forward to 2022, Roe v. Wade is overturned. So what's Arizona's abortion law? Do they go back to that 1977 law? And the Arizona State Supreme Court said, yes, that's precisely what's supposed to happen. This law's on the books. Roe v. Wade's overturned. Well, this law's still on the books. There's no reason why it's not enforceable now. This resulted in abortion doctors in Arizona freaking out, along with Arizona's Democrat governor and Democrat attorney general. Basically, you have these... Now, basically, abortion doctors in Arizona are now scared of performing abortions, even though I highly suspect, even if they continue to do abortions, not one of them would be prosecuted. I'm sure the governor would pardon them. I'm sure the governor would stop such a prosecution. Yeah. The attorney general would stop such a prosecution.
She explicitly said, I will make sure, I'll do everything in my power. No one's going to be prosecuted under this law.
Right. But these abortion doctors are still, I guess, nervous about, for the sake of their license or something, that if they're performing services that are illegal under Arizona law, they're too skittish to do this. And it's also this. A lot of abortion doctors... That's what they rely on for their money.
Right.
92% of OBGYNs don't do abortions. It's this very small, relatively speaking, small number of doctors who actually do it and then who actually do it to such an extent that they rely on it for income. So the picture that's being painted is, women in Arizona will need to travel to California to get their abortions, and they deserve to have continuity of care so that their doctor in Arizona can travel to California to follow the patient so that they can do their abortion in California, which seems totally implausible.
Right.
On like 20 different levels. Women who are showing up at a Planned Parenthood for an abortion do not have a deep, long-standing relationship with the OBGYN who's going to do their abortion.
Right.
That's just not the case. The doctor is the idea that a patient will go to California and the doctor will follow them, and somehow that's going to provide better continuity of care. When, by the way, that doesn't happen in obstetric care even when we're talking about normal labor and delivery. Jonathan and my wives, they have their OBGYN, but the person who actually delivers the baby might not be that one particular OBGYN. Correct. Might just be another doctor in their group. So this idea that, yes, we need to establish continuity of care, it's ridiculous. All this law is doing is it expedites the licensure process for Arizona doctors so that they can perform abortions in California from now through November when the law in Arizona is going to change. By the way, California already set up processes to facilitate out-of-state doctors coming to California just to do abortions.
Right.
Not out-of-state doctors coming here, to take care of kids with broken arms or do surgeries for poor kids or to take care of the massive population of women in poorer communities in California who don't get any prenatal care. No, not for that do we facilitate licensure. But if you want to come to California and do abortions, we'll roll out the red carpet for you. We'll let you bypass the normal processes for medical licensure, which is not a simple, easy thing. I was talking with a friend of mine who's a dentist, Deacon Michael at Michael Madrigal. He's a Right to Life supporter, and
he's also a California Family Council supporter.
And he's a deacon at our parish, and he's a dentist. And he was saying, for me to get my licensure, my dental licensure, it's not just a nothing burger. I mean, there's a lot of hoops you got to go through.
Seinfeld jokes aside.
Yes. And he was saying, I'm offended at this notion that here I am doing everything right. I'm jumping through all these hoops for licensure, but apparently to do abortions, the state thinks that all the stuff required for medical licensure in California, who gives a care?
Yep.
And he's right. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. Now, when we return, we will emphasize the audience really that Gavin Newsom is playing for here. We'll close out the show with that. This is Right to Life Radio. John Girardi and Jonathan Keller with you here on Power Talk 96.7 and AM 1400. Back with you on Right to Life Radio. Why did Governor Newsom sign this law to allow abortion doctors in Arizona to come to California to do abortions? I have my theory, Jonathan Keller from California Family Council. I'm sure you have your theories.
I do.
Let's and maybe our theories are exactly the same, but let's hear your idea. So, for those who don't know, Gavin Newsom signed SB 233, which is the SB 233 is the bill that allows doctors from Arizona to travel to California to do abortions here between now and November. Arizona had its old law outlawing abortion come into effect post the Dobbs decision, post the repeal of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And these doctors want to continue doing abortions and making money. So California has passed this law giving them expedited, temporary, quick California state licensure so that these doctors in Arizona can keep making their money, come to Arizona, do abortions. Why, Jonathan Keller, do you think Gavin Newsom is doing this?
Well, I do think, John, like you said, there is a part of it is all of his donors, the thing that you have repeatedly mentioned both on this show and on your local show.
Yeah.
That I think he has this small cabal, this coterie of high net worth individuals who have been funding his political ascendancy for decades, literally. Right. And I think
who've really been funding his entire adult life.
Yes.
If you think about it. Like, for those who don't know, the Getty family, for whom Gavin Newsom's dad served as an attorney for years, the Getty Oil Company. Gavin Newsom's dad was an attorney for them. Gavin grew up with Gordon Getty. Gordon Getty was an investor in like 12 of the 11 of the 12 businesses that Gavin Newsom ran prior to entering local San Francisco politics. So these elite liberal donors from the Bay Area have genuinely funded Gavin Newsom's entire adult life.
Right. And I think that is a huge portion of it. I also do think, though, that we've mentioned this in the past. I think that there's a likelihood that abortion is the magic silver bullet, I guess you could say, that a lot of people think, a lot of Democrats think is going to be their ticket to electoral success in November. And to be fair, they've seen they have good reason to think that between the 2022 midterms and then the 2023 kind of special off-year elections. We've mentioned in the past everything that happened with even Ohio voting the way it did.
Right.
But I think
Ohio, which basically reinstituted Roe v. Wade into their own state constitution after having previously, its legislature had previously passed laws to severely limit abortion. They passed a statewide constitutional amendment through a statewide vote to enshrine legal abortion in the Ohio state constitution. So, well, yeah, and maybe the idea then, Jonathan, so you're saying, John, that maybe the idea is, Gavin Newsom's doing everything he can to put his best foot forward on the abortion thing, and this has a knockoff effect to help out Democrats. Because, I mean, you are right. The one area where Joe Biden polls, if you look at issue by issue, Trump does better on the economy. Trump does better on foreign policy. Trump does better on inflation. Trump does better on this, on immigration. Trump does better on that. The only subject where Joe Biden polls better than Donald Trump is abortion.
Correct.
It's the only thing.
Everything else is not.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think, John, is interesting, you got to look at it from two things. Number one, I think he looks at it and he says, there's a very good chance, realistically, and you look at how Donald Trump is doing right now in leading in certain states, there's a very strong chance that the election is going to come down to maybe not 6 to 8 swing states. It could come down to 1 to 2 swing states. I mean,
of which Arizona could be one.
It could come down to Arizona and Georgia as the two swing states that may be the deciding factor. And if they're able to say, hey, look, it was the Republicans who were originally supporting this horrible, quote unquote, abortion-related law, and it was the Democrats both in California and in Arizona that tried to protect your abortion rights.
Right.
But also, John, I think you got to remember that in California, I think they want to try to juice the turnout, not only of their base voters, and get them excited about, look at what we're doing for you, but I think they also are thinking of the congressional races. And
yeah, that's true. I mean, they're going to have there are a lot of super duper competitive House of Representatives races that are in California. John Duarte's seat, David Valadeo's seat, those are probably two of the top. I'm pretty sure that's two of the top 5 closest races in the country. And
Katie Porter's seat, which is now an open seat, she barely won. She's a Democrat, but down in Orange County, she barely won that seat against Scott Baugh, and she foolishly gave up her seat to try to run for Senate this last year. So now that's an open seat. Scott Baugh had already announced he was going to be taking her on again.
I didn't realize that seat was so close.
Oh,
she really ran for Senate? Well,
she did because I think she knew that it might be more
easier to win, easier to win than her House. That's some show chutzpah by Katie Porter.
But John, let me give you an example here. If you look at the current breakdown of a possible / likely map for electoral votes in November, if you essentially say, all right, you've got Joe Biden that holds on to some of the states he won last year. He holds on to, or last time, he holds on to Wisconsin. He holds on to Georgia. He holds on to Nevada. But let's say that Trump takes back Michigan and Pennsylvania. That puts Trump at 265 electoral votes. It puts Joe Biden at 262 electoral votes.
Arizona would decide.
With Arizona being 11 votes to decide the presidency.
Yeah. Well, and that makes sense. And that would also make sense given kind of the nature of these donors. I mean, I've always said Gavin Newsom does the bidding of his political masters. And that's this, group of about maybe 100 big-time California Democrat donors who are donors not just for California politics, but also on the national stage. I often ask, well, why did Joe Biden pick Kamala Harris? He had no history of working with her. They didn't overlap at all in the Senate, and she didn't enter the Senate until he left being vice president. Like, they have no working history, and Kamala Harris kind of called him a racist to his face during the 2016, during the 2020 primaries. So why did he pick her? Well, Harris is the darling of these California big-time Democrat donors, the same ones who fund Newsom. And those donors have that national strategic eye.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, so if Newsom is doing this to make them happy, like, it's not just Newsom. I mean, it's not just Newsom playing for these donors so that he can one day run for president. Right. I do believe that's part of it. But it's also Democrats want to win. And these national donors, these national donors, they're thinking about the House, they're thinking about the Senate, as well as the White House.
The Supreme Court.
And they're definitely thinking about the Supreme Court.
And I'll tell you, John, I've seen some, there's an article in Politico that said the freak out, Democrats freak out over Joe Biden. This is one that was just published, and I think earlier this week. They were pointing out a lot of Democrats are freaking out that if Trump is reelected, they're saying, hey, look, Sam Alito is like 75, Clarence Thomas is like 73 or something.
Trump will get to replace them.
Will get to replace both of them. And there's a decent chance also with how bad Sotomayor's health is, she could pass away. And if that happens, you could be looking at not Trump appointing 3 justices, but maybe appointing 6 total justices.
I mean, we can only hope. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio.
A C3 perspective.
Well, hey, I like his judicial appointments. I think that's C3 compliant. All
right.
That's right. That'll do it for Right to Life Radio. We will see you all next time God bless.